Welcome to Sleepy Crimes. I am Anna, your host. Tonight, we drift into the shadows of the colossal squid, a titan of the deep that exists at the very edge of human understanding. Imagine, if you will, the furthest reaches of the South, where the world is stripped of its color and replaced by a spectrum of white, silver, and the deepest, most bruised shades of indigo. We are in the Ross Sea, a vast and ancient stretch of the Southern Ocean that lies cradled by the frozen continent of Antarctica. Here, the air is so cold it feels brittle, like a pane of glass ready to shatter with every breath you take. The wind does not just blow. It whispers through the rigging of ships, carrying the secrets of 1,000 miles of untouched ice. In this desolate, beautiful wilderness, the line between the sky and the sea often vanishes, leaving only a shimmering, frozen horizon that seems to stretch into infinity. It is late February in the year 2007. The austral summer is beginning to wane, and the light has a lingering, golden quality that never truly fades into total darkness. In these frigid waters, a fishing vessel named the San Aspiring holds its position. The ship is a sturdy construction of steel and grit, a necessary sanctuary against the crushing pressure of the Antarctic environment. On board, the crew under Captain John Bennett follows a rhythm as steady as the ocean's swell. Their target is the Antarctic toothfish, a creature of the depths that requires miles of longline to reach. The winch hums with a low, mechanical vibration that resonates through the deck, a rhythmic companion to the splashing of waves against the hull. The sailors move with practiced efficiency, their heavy gear crinkling in the cold, their breath forming small, fleeting clouds that vanish into the salt spray. For hours, the line has been coming up from the abyss, thousands of meters below the keel. The water here is nearly freezing, a thick and heavy liquid that guards its treasures jealously. As the hooks rise through the water column, they bring with them the strange and wonderful biology of the deep. But on this particular day, February 22nd, the rhythm of the winch changes. There is a weight on the line that feels different, not the frantic tugging of a single fish, but a massive, sluggish gravity that seems to pull back against the ship itself. The tension in the steel cable is palpable, a silent signal to the crew that something extraordinary is ascending from the darkness. The water begins to swirl around the rising line, and the usual surface ripples are replaced by a heavy, oily calm, as if the sea is holding its breath for what is about to emerge. Through the translucent blue of the surface layers, a shape begins to form. It is not the silver flash of a toothfish, but a vast, pinkish-red mass that appears to glow against the dark water. At first, the fishermen believe they are seeing a tangled mass of kelp, or perhaps a cluster of several fish. But as the object nears the hull, the true scale of the creature reveals itself. It is a squid, but one of such proportions that it defies the mind's ability to categorize it. It is the Messinichotuthis hamiltoni, the colossal squid. It has not been caught by a hook, but rather, it has latched itself onto a toothfish that was already snagged. The squid is a shadow brought into the light, its mantle thick and muscular, its skin a deep, bead-red hue that seems to absorb the pale Antarctic sun. It does not struggle with the frantic energy of a smaller creature. It moves with a slow, ghostly grace, its massive body rippling as it is drawn toward the side of the San Aspiring. The crew watches in a state of hushed awe as the beast breaks the surface. The sight is something out of a mariner's legend. They see eyes the size of large dinner plates, perhaps 27 centimeters across, staring back with an unblinking, alien intelligence. These are the largest eyes in the animal kingdom, evolved to catch the faintest glimmer of bioluminescence in the crushing dark of the midnight zone. As the squid is maneuvered closer, the fishermen see the terrifying weaponry of its limbs. Unlike other squid that rely primarily on suckers, the colossal squid possesses rows of sharp, swiveling hooks embedded in its tentacles. These hooks, carved from chitin and sharp as razors, are designed to pierce the thick skin of its only true enemy, the sperm whale. The creature is nearly 10 meters in length, a sprawling architect of the deep that weighs almost 500 kilograms. It is a half-ton of mystery, slick with the icy water of the Ross Sea, pulsating slowly as it encounters the thin air of the world above. For 2 long, quiet hours, the crew works with a delicate precision to secure the specimen. There is no shouting, only the focused coordination of men who realize they are the first humans to witness a living adult of this species in such detail. They recognize that this is not just a catch. It is a bridge to a world we have never truly visited. The squid's presence on the deck changes the very atmosphere of the ship. The smell of the ocean, the coldness of the steel, and the sheer physical reality of the creature create a moment of profound connection to the unknown. As the San Aspiring begins the long journey back toward New Zealand, the giant is carefully preserved in a massive tank of ice. The discovery marks the end of a myth and the beginning of a scientific odyssey. Tonight, we leave the deck of the ship and begin our descent into the biology and the legend of this frozen titan. Rest now, as the icy waves lap against the hull, and let the mystery of the deep carry you into a peaceful slumber. The transition from the cold, clinical reality of the research vessel to the ancient, salt-encrusted world of legend is as seamless as the ocean's surface on a calm day. As the crew works in the flickering light of the deck, their breath blooming in the night air, we must remember that they are not the first to stand in awe of such a shadow. Long before sonar or deep-sea cameras, the deep held a different kind of weight. It was a place of divine mystery and primal terror, a blank canvas where the human mind painted its most vivid nightmares. To understand the creature we look upon today, we must look back into the mist of the 1300s, where the first whispers of the abyss began to take a shape that would haunt mariners for nearly 1,000 years. The water, then, was not a resource to be mapped, but a vast, unknowable boundary between the world of men and the realm of the monstrous. In the middle of the 13th century, an unknown author penned a philosophical work known as the King's Mirror. Within its weathered pages, there is a description of a creature called the half-gufa, or the sea reek. It was said to be the largest of all monsters, so immense that it appeared less like a living being and more like a floating island. The author speaks of it with a tone of quiet, measured dread, noting that it was rarely seen, as if the ocean itself was trying to keep its greatest secret hidden. It was described as having 2 massive rocks that would rise from the waves, but these were not stones at all. They were the upper and lower jaws of a beast so large that a ship could sail right into its open mouth, without the sailors ever realizing they had left the safety of the open sea. This was the dawn of the Kraken, a name that would eventually become synonymous with the crushing power of the deep. Imagine the sensory experience of those early voyagers. The air would be thick with the smell of brine and decaying kelp, what they called the sea steam. They would see the water begin to bubble and churn, as if the very floor of the ocean were rising to meet the sky. There are accounts of men who believed they had found new land, only to anchor their ships and step out onto a surface that was soft, dark, and alive. They would light fires to cook their meals, and only when the heat seeped through the thick, rubbery skin of the beast would the island begin to sink. In those moments, the realization of their mistake came too late. The water would rush in, creating a violent, swirling vortex that pulled everything, ships, men, and hope, into the dark. These stories were the first attempts to explain the sheer mass of something like the colossal squid, long before science could provide a name for the hooks and the beak. By the time we reached the year 1752, the legend had evolved into something more terrifyingly specific. Eric Pontoppidan, the Bishop of Bergen, recorded the testimonies of countless Norwegian fishermen in his Natural History of Norway. He described the kraken as a creature with a circumference of over 1.5 miles. It was said to have a back that looked like a cluster of small islands covered in seaweed. But as it rose, something far more unsettling appeared. Long, bright points or horns began to emerge from the water, growing thicker and higher, until they stood as tall as the masts of middle-sized vessels. These were the tentacles of the giant, reaching out to feel the air. Pontoppidan's descriptions were a bridge between the mythological and the biological. He believed the creature was real, an animal that simply lived at such staggering depths that it only rarely graced the surface of our world. There was a strange, practical side to this folklore as well. Fishermen would often whisper about fishing on the Kraken. They knew that when the monster rose toward the surface, it displaced thousands of smaller fish, driving them upward in a panicked silver cloud. If a captain was brave, or perhaps foolish, enough to sail directly over the rising beast, the catch would be more bountiful than anything they had ever seen. It was a gamble with death for the sake of survival. They would watch the color of the water change from a deep, navy blue to a murky, translucent green, signaling that the monster was near. They lived in a constant state of reverence and fear, knowing that the same creature that provided their living could, with a single movement of its many arms, drag their entire world into the lightless trenches of the South. The colossal squid, with its rotating hooks and eyes as large as dinner plates, is the ghost that gave rise to these machines of myth. In the silence of the abyss, the creature doesn't need to be a mile wide to be a monster. Its reality is far more elegant and lethal. As we look back at the old maps, decorated with serpents and many-armed krakens, we see the echoes of what the crew is finding now. The ancient sailors were not lying. They were simply trying to translate the impossible. They were describing the weight of the unknown. The sea reek of the 1300s and the bishop's horned beast of the 1800s are all ancestors of the specimen currently being secured on the deck. The whispers of the abyss have always been there, hummed by the currents, waiting for a time when we were finally quiet enough to listen to the truth of the deep. Imagine the hide of a sperm whale, a vast, dark expanse of weathered bluish-gray skin that has spent decades navigating the crushing pressures of the Southern Ocean. For many years, this skin was the only map we had to the world of the colossal squid. To the human eye, these whales often look like survivors of a war we cannot see. Their massive heads are etched with a language of violence, covered in white, circular scars and deep, jagged gouges that tell the story of a struggle occurring thousands of feet below the surface. These are not merely wounds. They are the testimony of the whale. While the more common giant squid leaves behind simple circular rings from its serrated suckers, the marks left by the colossal squid are far more sinister. They are long, parallel lines, often several inches deep, where the squid's unique, swiveling hooks have gripped and sliced through the whale's thick blubber as the leviathan tried to swallow its prey. Each scar is a memory of a lightless encounter, a physical record of a predator and prey locked in a dance that has repeated for millions of years. The first tangible evidence of this creature did not come from a captured specimen or a lucky photograph, but from the dark, acidic depths of a whale's stomach. In the winter of 1924 and 1925, British zoologist Guy Robson stood in a cold laboratory, examining two strange arm crowns that had been recovered from a sperm whale caught near the Falkland Islands. These were not the arms of any known squid. They were thicker, more muscular, and tipped with a frightening array of biological weaponry. Robson saw that these arms were equipped with hooks that could rotate 360 degrees, designed to latch into flesh and never let go. He officially named the species Mesonichotuthis hamiltoni, but it would take nearly 80 years for the world to see more than just these fragmented pieces. For decades, the colossal squid remained a ghost, known only through the indigestible bits it left behind inside its greatest enemy. When scientists began to study the contents of sperm whale stomachs more systematically, the results were staggering. They found thousands upon thousands of hard, black, parrot-like beaks. These beaks are made of chitin, a material so durable that even the powerful digestive enzymes of a whale cannot break them down. By counting and measuring these beaks, researchers realized that the colossal squid was not just a rare visitor to the deep, but a primary source of life for the whales of the Antarctic. In some regions, it appeared that the colossal squid made up as much as 77% of the biomass consumed by these massive mammals. Despite their weight and their ferocity, these squids were being hunted by the millions. The whales would dive down 2,000 meters into the freezing, lightless bathypelagic zone, using their clicking echolocation to find the shimmering, reddish forms of the squids in the dark. It is a silent, high-stakes battle where the squid uses its hooks to defend itself, often leaving the whale with permanent reminders of the fight around its jaw and blowhole. There is a strange, ancient irony in how we discovered these creatures. The very same sharp beaks that could tear through a whale's throat also led to the creation of one of the world's most luxurious substances. To protect their internal organs from the sharp, jagged edges of the squid beaks, the sperm whale's digestive system produces a waxy, protective substance known as ambergris. This substance coats the beaks, smoothing their edges so they can pass through the whale without causing fatal damage. For centuries, humans prized ambergris for its use in expensive perfumes, never realizing that the sweet-smelling fixative was actually a biological shield against the weapons of a deep-sea monster. Every piece of ambergris ever found on a beach or harvested from a whale was a testament to a meal and a survival story. Within those waxy lumps lay the tiny, black beaks of the colossal squid, hidden like seeds in a fruit, waiting for a scientist to finally look closely enough to see the truth they held. As we look at these scars and beaks, we begin to understand the scale of the colossal squid's world. This is not a creature that lives in isolation. It is a titan of an ecosystem that covers a vast portion of our planet's southern oceans. Each mark on a whale's skin represents a moment where the squid fought for its life, swiveling its 25 hooks to find purchase in the thick, gray hide of its attacker. Imagine the scene at 3,000 feet below the waves. There is no sunlight here, only the occasional burst of bioluminescence. The water is a constant 2 degrees Celsius. The whale, a warm-blooded giant, descends into this freezer, its heart rate slowing to a few beats per minute to conserve oxygen. It hunts by sound, listening for the echo of its clicks to bounce off the soft, fluid-filled body of the squid. When they meet, the water churns with a desperate energy. The squid is not a passive victim. It is a 400-kilogram machine of muscle and beak, and the scars on the whale prove that it gives as good as it gets. By the late 20th century, our knowledge of the colossal squid was still confined to these indirect clues. We had the beaks, the hooks, and the scars, but we lacked the whole picture. We were like detectives looking at the aftermath of a crime without ever having seen the perpetrator. We knew the squid was heavy, perhaps even heavier than the giant squid, and we knew it was adapted for the extreme cold. We knew its eyes were likely the largest in the animal kingdom, evolved to catch the faint glow of disturbed plankton or the bioluminescent flashes of other deep-sea dwellers. But the animal itself remained a mystery, tucked away in the freezing currents surrounding Antarctica. The testimony of the whale had given us the outline, but the colors and the details remained hidden in the pressure and the silence. It would take a new century and a new kind of bravery for us to finally pull the ghost from the shadows and see its face for the very first time. The Southern Ocean is a place of restless, iron-gray water, where the horizon often disappears into a seamless shroud of fog and freezing spray. It is here, in this desolate wilderness at the bottom of the world, that the ghost first announced itself. For decades, the colossal squid was less of a biological reality and more of a spectral presence, a collection of hints left behind in the dark. Our formal introduction to this titan occurred in the winter of 1925, when a British zoologist named Guy Robson stood in a quiet laboratory, staring at a set of heavy, muscular arms that had been pulled from the stomach of a sperm whale. These were not the slender limbs of a common giant squid. They were something heavier, armed with rotating hooks that looked like the claws of a nightmare. Robson named the creature Mesenichotuthis hamiltoni, but in doing so, He only added a name to avoid. He had no body, no eyes to meet, and no way to know if what he held was a freak of nature or the master of the Antarctic abyss. After that initial spark in 1925, a long and agonizing silence fell over the scientific community. For more than 50 years, the colossal squid remained a phantom. Marine biologists and explorers would venture south, their ships buffeted by the screaming 60s and the furious 50s, the legendary winds that guard the southern ice. They lowered nets into the crushing depths, hoping to catch even a glimpse of the creature that left such savage scars on the skin of whales, but the ocean gave up nothing. The frustration was palpable. Scientists were forced to become forensic investigators of the dead, sifting through the digestive remains of predators to find the only evidence that existed: the hard, chitinous beaks of the squid. Each beak suggested a creature of impossible proportions, yet the living animal stayed hidden in the lightless pressure of the bathypelagic zone, thousands of feet below the churning surface. Imagine the atmosphere on those early research vessels. The air smells of salt, diesel, and the metallic tang of freezing steel. The scientists would huddle over flickering monitors or stand on the rain-slicked decks, watching the heavy winch cables groan as they pulled miles of line from the darkness. Every time a net broke the surface, there was a collective breath held in anticipation. But for year after year, the results were the same. They found small glass squids, translucent and delicate. They found strange, deep-sea fish with glowing lures, but the colossal giant remained elusive. It was as if the animal was aware of the intrusion, a master of stealth that could sense the vibrations of a ship from miles away. The Southern Ocean is not just cold. It is deep in a way that is difficult for the human mind to grasp, a vertical desert of liquid space where a creature as large as a bus can vanish without leaving a single bubble. The first true crack in the mystery finally appeared in 1981. A Soviet-Russian trawler was working the frigid waters of the Ross Sea, dragging its nets through the deep in search of fish. When the net was hauled up onto the deck, the crew found something that stopped them in their tracks. Tangled in the mesh was an immature female squid, measuring over 4 meters in length. Though it was not a full-grown adult, it was the most complete specimen the world had ever seen. For the first time, human eyes could trace the curve of its mantle and the strange, broad fins that allowed it to navigate the abyss. This discovery sent a shockwave through the world of marine science, yet it also deepened the frustration. If an immature specimen was this large, what did the true elders of the species look like? The hunt intensified, but the technology of the 1980s and 90s still struggled against the brutal conditions of the Antarctic. The primary obstacle was always the environment. The water near the Antarctic continent is consistently near the freezing point, and the pressure at 1,000 meters is enough to crush a standard submarine like a tin can. Scientists attempted to use remote-operated vehicles and deep-sea cameras, but the sheer vastness of the Southern Ocean made the task like searching for a single needle in a cathedral made of ink. There were moments of agonizing proximity. Longline fishermen would occasionally report a massive, reddish shape rising from the depths to snatch a toothfish from their hooks, only for the creature to release its grip and vanish back into the gloom just as the cameras were readied. These almost encounters became the lore of the Southern Ocean, stories told by weary researchers over coffee in the galley, wondering if they were chasing a legend that simply did not want to be found. By the late 20th century, the colossal squid had become the ultimate prize, the holy grail of teuthology. We had mapped the moon and explored the farthest reaches of the continents, yet this enormous, living being remained a total mystery in its own home. The frustration of the scientists was rooted in a profound sense of humility. They realized that they were trying to observe a creature that had been perfectly adapted to its environment for millions of years, while they were merely fragile visitors in a world of ice and shadow. We knew it was there. We could feel its presence in the scarred hides of the whales and the empty spaces in our nets. It was a ghost that haunted the scientific imagination, a reminder that the deep ocean still held secrets that could not be bought or captured easily. The decades of failure were not just a lack of luck. They were a testament to the colossal squid's mastery of the world beneath the waves, a world where it remained, for a long time, the undisputed and invisible queen. Deepest canyons of the earth, yet the heart of the Southern Ocean remained a vast, icy blank space on our map of the living world. In the Ross Sea, the ice is a constant, frozen companion. In February of 2007, during the final weeks of the Antarctic summer, the crew of the San Aspiring was deep within these ice-choked waters. The ship, under skipper John Bennett, was a solitary point of light in a gray wilderness. Above, the sky was a pale twilight. Below, the water was a bottomless ink. The crew hauled toothfish from 2 kilometers down. They knew the rhythm of the winch and the thud of fish on the deck. But on this 22nd of February, that rhythm was about to break in a way that would change marine science forever. The line began to come up with a strange resistance. It wasn't the sharp tugging of a fish or the dead weight of a rock. This was a slow, pulsing tension, as if the ship were pulling a piece of the ocean floor itself. The winch groaned as the fishermen gathered at the railing. In the dark water, a shape materialized. At first, it was a pale blur, a ghost rising from the darkness. As it neared the surface, the color shifted to a deep, bruised crimson. The surface of the ocean was broken. The crew held their breath. They were used to seeing strange eels, but nothing prepared them for the scale of the nightmare now drifting toward the hull. It was a colossal squid, still clinging tenaciously to a hooked toothfish. As the creature broke the surface, the silence on deck was absolute. The squid was a tangled mass of muscle that seemed to defy biology. Its eyes, the largest in the animal kingdom, stared back with a haunting gaze. Each was the size of a dinner plate, measuring nearly 27 centimeters across. They were designed to capture the faintest glimmers of light in the midnight zone. The creature was nearly 10 meters long, and it was clear it was in distress. The change in pressure and the surface air were sapping the life from its alien body. Yet, even in its final moments, it did not let go of its prey. It remained wrapped around the fish, its skin shimmering with a dying luster of iridescent purple and red, a predator until the end. Skipper John Bennett knew this was a specimen for history. He ordered the winches to stop. For the next 2 hours, the crew performed a delicate dance with the Leviathan. They couldn't simply haul it over the side. Its soft flesh would have been torn by the steel ship. Instead, they maneuvered the creature into a large cargo net while it was partially submerged. The men worked with focused intensity, their breath visible in white plumes as they used long poles to guide the net. There was a fear the squid would slip back or that a predator would snatch the prize. But the crew was patient, treating the dying giant with a reverence that matched the silence of the Ross Sea. Finally, the cargo net was secure. The winch hummed, and the colossal squid was slowly lifted. The weight was staggering, later recorded at 495 kilograms. As it settled onto the deck, the terror of its anatomy became visible. Unlike the giant squid, the colossal has rotating hooks on its tentacles, vicious claws designed to sink into the flesh of sperm whales. The crew stood back, mesmerized by these hooks, which glistened like black glass. The creature was still, its mantle heaving slightly as it took its last breaths of the thin air. Without delay, they moved it into the hold, placing it in a massive freezer submerged in brine. Every second mattered to preserve this incredible deep-sea discovery. The San Aspiring turned north toward New Zealand. News of the catch sparked a fever of anticipation. When the ship docked, the squid was taken to the T. Papa Museum in Wellington. Experts like Dr. Steve O'Shea and Dr. Kat Bolstad would perform a historic necropsy. They discovered the creature was a female, her body filled with thousands of eggs, a testament to her life in the crushing blackness. For the first time, the world saw the colossal squid as a complete, magnificent reality. As it was studied under laboratory lights, it served as a bridge between our world and the abyss. It reminded us that the ocean still holds giants, drifting in a cold, eternal peace. When the San Aspiring finally pulled into the harbor at Wellington in early 2007, the air was thick with a salty chill that mirrored the frozen cargo tucked deep within its hold. The arrival was not marked by fanfare or the usual bustle of a fishing vessel returning with its haul. Instead, there was a heavy, calculated silence as the ship made its way to the docks. The squid was no longer a living inhabitant of the Ross Sea. It had become a biological monument, encased in a massive block of ice that the crew affectionately called the squidsicle. This frozen sarcophagus was the only thing standing between the specimen and the swift, unforgiving process of decay. To keep nearly 500 kilograms of delicate cephalopod tissue from turning into a slurry of salt water and regret, the crew had frozen it inside a sturdy landing net and a thick plastic container immediately after its capture. It was a massive, translucent cube of ice, weighing as much as a small car, and it required the steady hands of industrial crane operators to lift it from the deck. As the crane groaned under the weight, the sunlight caught the edges of the ice, hinting at the deep, dark shape suspended within. The journey from the docks to the Museum of New Zealand Te Papa Tongarewa was a logistical dance of cold chain precision. A specialized climate-controlled truck waited at the pier, its interior pre-chilled to sub-zero temperatures. For the researchers waiting at the Torrey Street facility, the arrival of the truck was the beginning of a long and patient vigil. The squid was not destined for immediate dissection. It was a treasure that needed to be preserved for eternity. It was moved into a massive industrial freezer, where it would remain for the next 14 months. During this silent year, the giant slept once more, this time in the heart of the city. The hum of the freezer units became a constant background drone, a mechanical lullaby for a creature that had once known only the crushing silence of the abyss. Scientists from around the world traded emails and mapped out every millimeter of the upcoming preservation process, knowing that they only had one chance to get this right. The logistical challenge was not just the weight, but the physics of the thaw. If the exterior thawed too fast while the core remained frozen, the skin would simply slew off like wet paper. In 2008, the time finally came to wake the monument. A custom-built thawing tank had been constructed specifically for this moment, a 6-meter-long basin made of heavy plywood and lined with multiple layers of resilient polythene. It was designed to hold 6,000 liters of salt water, carefully calibrated to match the salinity of the Southern Ocean. The researchers, clad in heavy rubber waders and gumboots, watched as the ice block was lowered into the tank with agonizing slowness. To control the rate of the melt, they used a ton of crushed ice, shoveling it into the water to keep the temperature hovering at exactly 10 degrees Celsius. This was the critical threshold. If the water became too warm, bacteria would flourish and consume the specimen from the inside out. For several days, the lab was a place of rhythmic sounds. The soft splash of saline, the clinking of ice, and the low murmurs of experts monitoring thermometers. They used running water to gently erode the ice, watching as the blue plastic and the landing net slowly emerged from the white frost like a ghost appearing through a fog. As the ice receded, the true scale of the colossal squid was revealed for the first time on land. The researchers worked with delicate precision, using scalpels to cut away the blue plastic lining and the mesh of the net that had held the creature together. What they found was a specimen of incredible integrity. The mantle was over 2.5 meters long, a massive muscular tube that felt strangely firm even in death. Its skin, once a vibrant deep red, had paled to a ghostly pinkish gray, but the structures beneath were intact. They marveled at the 8 thick arms and the 2 shorter, powerful tentacles, each lined with those terrifying, swiveling hooks. The most breathtaking moment came when the eyes were finally cleared of frost. At 27 centimeters across, they were the largest eyes ever recorded in the animal kingdom, staring out with a fixed, milky intensity. These were organs designed to detect the faintest glimmer of bioluminescence in a world of absolute darkness. And even here, under the sterile fluorescent lights of the wet lab, they commanded a sense of awe that hushed the room. Once the thaw was complete, the process shifted from physics to chemistry. To stop the biological clock permanently, the team began the grueling task of formalin fixation. They didn't just submerge the squid. They had to ensure the preservative reached the very center of its dense tissues. Using long needles, they injected a 10% formalin solution directly into the arms and the thick walls of the mantle. The smell in the lab became sharp and medicinal, a stinging reminder of the toxicity required to cheat time. The squid was then left to soak in a 6,000-liter bath of formalin for 2 months. During this period, the tissues underwent a chemical transformation, becoming harder and less flexible as the proteins were permanently locked in place. It was a delicate chemical alchemy, requiring constant monitoring of the acidity levels. If the solution became too acidic, it would dissolve the squid's beak and the delicate chitinous hooks on its arms. Every 3 hours for the first day, and every few days thereafter, scientists checked the pH levels, buffering the solution with bicarbonate to keep the environment perfectly neutral. The final logistical hurdle was the move to the public gallery. Formalin is a potent preservative, but it is also highly toxic to humans, making it unsuitable for a public exhibit where thousands of visitors would gather. The solution had to be swapped for propylene glycol, a syrupy, clear liquid commonly used as an antifreeze. This required moving the entire 2.5-ton display tank across town. The journey was a masterpiece of planning. A heavy-duty crane hoisted the tank onto a climate-controlled truck, equipped with adjustable shock absorbers to prevent the squid from sliding and tearing its own flesh. With a police escort and a traffic management firm clearing the way, the truck navigated the winding, hilly streets of Wellington. They had to account for a 20-degree gradient on one particular road, ensuring the tank stayed as horizontal as possible to keep the liquid from sloshing and throwing the truck off balance. Finally, the monument in ice was settled into its permanent home, a silent, swirling world of glycol where it remains to this day, a testament to the colossal effort required to bring a nightmare of the deep into the light of the sun. For over a year, the colossal squid had existed as a phantom in the dark, held fast within a walk-in freezer at the Museum of New Zealand Te Papa Tongarewa. It was no longer a creature of the currents, but a massive, frozen monolith that the staff affectionately nicknamed the squidsicle. Weighing 495 kilograms, it was a solid block of history and ice, waiting for the moment the world was ready to see it. In late April of 2008, that moment finally arrived. The air in the Torrey Street laboratory was thick with a quiet, clinical anticipation. Bright fluorescent lights hummed overhead, reflecting off the stainless steel surfaces and the white lab coats of the waiting scientists. There was a peculiar gravity to the room, a sense that we were about to peel back the layers of a myth. The first challenge was simply moving it. A half-ton block of ice requires more than just human hands. A forklift was brought in, its mechanical growl echoing through the sterile halls as it carefully maneuvered the specimen toward its temporary home. The scientists had spent a month preparing for this transition. They had constructed a custom thawing tank, 6 meters long and built from sturdy plywood panels. Inside, it was lined with several layers of heavy-duty polythene to create a waterproof cradle. This was not a simple bath of tap water. To preserve the integrity of the tissue, the team filled the tank with 6,000 liters of water and added 320 kilograms of salt. This created a saline solution that mirrored the chemistry of the deep Southern Ocean. The salt served a dual purpose. It lowered the freezing point of the water, allowing for a more controlled melt, and it acted as a mild sterilizing agent to prevent any bacteria from claiming the specimen before the researchers could. As the frozen block was lowered into the brine, the first ripples of the thaw began. It was a slow, rhythmic process. You could hear the faint, occasional crack of the ice as it adjusted to the warmer environment, a sound like a distant gunshot muffled by the depths of the sea. The primary concern for Dr. Kat Bolstad and her colleagues was a phenomenon known as the rot versus ice dilemma. Thawing an object this large is a delicate race against time. If the water was too warm, the outer layers of the squid's mantle would begin to decompose and rot while the core remained a solid, frozen mass. To prevent this, the team had to keep the temperature at a precise 10 degrees Celsius. They sourced a full ton of crushed ice from a local fishing company, shoveling it into the tank with rhythmic, metallic scrapes. The lab was filled with the sound of ice sliding into water, a chilling slush that kept the specimen in a state of suspended animation. As the outer layers of the ice block began to turn translucent, the blue plastic and the fishing net that had bound the squid since its capture in the Ross Sea started to emerge. Using long-handled tools and wearing heavy rubber waders, the technicians leaned over the tank to meticulously cut away the netting, centimeter by centimeter. As the netting fell away, the first hints of color returned to the creature. It was a pale, pinkish red, a ghostly remnant of the vibrant crimson it would have been in the abyssal depths. The skin was incredibly delicate, described by the researchers as almost gelatinous to the touch. It was a reminder that this was not a monster of steel and myth, but a biological wonder evolved for a world of immense pressure and freezing cold. The scientists worked with a quiet, focused reverence, their movements slow to avoid tearing the softening tissue. Every few hours, they would circulate the water, ensuring the temperature remained uniform. Through the surface of the saline bath, the massive silhouette of the mantle and the tangled crown of the arms began to unfurl. It was as if the squid was waking up from a long, cold sleep, stretching its limbs for the first time in over a year. The smell of the ocean began to fill the lab, a sharp, briny scent that carried the weight of the Antarctic ice shelf. Perhaps the most breathtaking moment of the thaw was the emergence of the eye. As the ice surrounding the head cleared, a single, massive eye became visible through the water. It was the size of a dinner plate, measuring 27 centimeters across with a lens as large as an orange. Even in death, and despite the damage of the freezing process, it was an intimidating sight. It was the largest eye ever recorded in the animal kingdom, built to capture the faint, bioluminescent flickers of the deep sea. The Swedish professors specializing in vision, Eric Warrant and Dan Nilsson, stood over the tank in awe. They spoke in hushed tones about the sheer light-gathering power of such an organ. To look into that eye was to realize how little we truly know about the world beneath the waves. It was a window into a darkness where we cannot follow, a place where this creature was once the master of its domain. 60 hours into the process, the thaw was nearly complete. The squid now lay fully unfurled, its body upside down in the tank, revealing the ventral surface. The team decided not to flip it, fearing that the sheer weight of the animal would cause its own tissues to collapse or tear. Instead, they adapted, performing their initial measurements in situ. They documented the beak, which was found to be smaller than some recovered from the stomachs of sperm whales, a chilling realization that even this massive specimen was not the largest of its kind. The global scientific community watched through a live webcast, tens of thousands of people witnessing the slow transition from ice to evidence. The air in the lab grew heavy with the scent of the sea and the first notes of chemical preservation. As the final shards of ice vanished into the saline, the era of the frozen myth ended, and the era of scientific discovery began. The squid was ready for its next transformation, one that would take it from the realm of the living and the frozen into the permanence of the museum gallery. The sterile air in the laboratory carries the sharp, saline scent of the Southern Ocean, mixed with the faint, chemical tang of the preservation fluids. We stand beside the great tank at T Papa, where the silence is broken only by the steady, rhythmic hum of the filtration system. The water is crystalline, offering an unshielded view of the Titan below. Now that the 60-hour thaw has concluded, the specimen is no longer a frozen block of mystery. It is a creature of immense, fleshy reality. We look down at the head, where two massive, orb-like shapes dominate the silhouette. These are the eyes of the colossal squid, the largest ever documented in the history of the animal kingdom, resting like twin moons in the dark expanse of its head. To see these eyes in person is to understand the scale of the deep. Each eye measures 27 centimeters across, which is roughly the same diameter as a soccer ball or a large dinner plate. In life, before the pressures of the surface and the rigors of the thaw took their toll, they may have been even larger, perhaps reaching 40 centimeters. They are not merely large, they are sophisticated instruments of the abyss. Within each orb lies a spherical lens the size of an orange, measuring 80 to 90 millimeters. The researchers at the museum have carefully noted the presence of photophores, which are bioluminescent light organs situated on the rear of the eyeball. These act as biological headlights, casting a faint, steady glow into the eternal midnight of the bathopelagic zone. The placement of these eyes tells a story of predatory precision. Unlike its cousin, the giant squid, whose eyes are situated on the sides of its head to scan for danger in all directions, the colossal squid's eyes are directed forward. This gives the creature binocular vision, allowing it to judge distances with incredible accuracy as it stalks its prey. In the crushing darkness 1,000 meters below the waves, where no sunlight can reach, these eyes are tuned to detect the smallest flickers of light. Specifically, they are designed to spot the glowing aura created when a sperm whale, the squid's only true enemy, disturbs the bioluminescent plankton as it swims. It is a warning system, a way to see the massive hunter coming before the hunter sees the squid. As we move our gaze away from the eyes, we encounter the complex arrangement of the limbs. The colossal squid possesses 8 arms, ranging in length from 85 centimeters to over 1 meter. These arms are not merely tools for swimming, they are heavily armed battlements. Unlike most common squid that rely solely on suction cups, the colossal squid has evolved something far more lethal. Along the middle of each arm, embedded in deep, muscular sheaths, are rows of 3-pointed hooks. Each hook features a strong central claw flanked by 2 smaller cusps. These are not meant for gentle gripping. They are designed to sink deep into the flesh of a struggling fish or a rival predator, locking the prey in place with a grip that is nearly impossible to break. Beyond the 8 arms lie the 2 long feeding tentacles, extending over 2 meters from the head. It is here that we find the most terrifying innovation of the Titan's anatomy. The ends of these tentacles, known as the clubs or the manus, are equipped with 22 to 25 rotating hooks. These hooks are set upon short, fleshy stalks that allow them to swivel 360 degrees. This mechanical perfection means that no matter how a fish twists or turns in a desperate attempt to escape, the hooks will simply rotate with the movement, maintaining their hold. It is a terrifyingly efficient system of capture, ensuring that once the colossal squid has made contact, the meal is inevitable. The texture of these hooks is fascinating. They are made of chitin, the same tough material that forms the beaks of cephalopods and the shells of crabs. In the laboratory light, they have a polished, translucent quality, looking like rows of sharp, amber-colored cat claws. Flanking these rows of rotating hooks are dozens of tiny, marginal suckers that provide a secondary level of grip, sealing the fate of any creature caught in their path. There is a brutal beauty in this design. Every curve of the hook and every swivel of the stalk has been honed by millions of years of evolution in the Southern Ocean, creating a predator that is perfectly adapted to the cold, high-pressure desert of the deep sea. Even in its current state, the specimen's skin holds onto fragments of its former glory. While much of the delicate red pigment has faded during the long journey from the Ross Sea to the museum, patches of deep maroon and pink remain, giving us a hint of how the squid might have looked as it glided through the Antarctic waters. The weight of the animal is a constant presence in the room. 495 kilograms of muscle, beak, and bone-hard chitin make it the heaviest invertebrate ever recorded, a true heavyweight of the natural world. As the scientists prepare their instruments for the next phase of the study, the sheer physicality of the squid seems to fill the entire laboratory space. We stand in awe of this titan, a creature that was once nothing more than a myth whispered by sailors or a collection of beaks found in the stomachs of whales. Here, it is tangible. The eyes that once watched for the shadows of giants are now being measured by calipers. The hooks that once fought for survival in the freezing depths are being photographed for journals. We have finished the external survey, having mapped the terrifying weaponry and the incredible sensory organs of the colossal squid. Now, the team prepares for the internal examination, ready to look past the mantle and into the hidden systems that kept this massive heart beating in the dark. The water here, 2,000 meters below the surface of the Southern Ocean, is a weight you can feel in your very marrow. It is a world of absolute compression, where the temperature hovers just above the point of freezing, and the silence is so heavy it feels like a physical presence. In this eternal midnight, we move from the myth to the machine. We are no longer looking at the colossal squid as a monster from a map, but as a masterpiece of biological engineering. To understand how this titan survives where light is a memory, we must look at the tools it carries. If we were to perform a forensic examination of its form, we would start with the eyes. They are not merely large. They are the largest eyes to ever exist in the history of the animal kingdom. Imagine an eye the size of a soccer ball, measuring nearly 30 centimeters across. These are not the flat, side-mounted eyes of a fish. They face forward, giving the squid the gift of binocular vision. In the pitch black, this allows the creature to judge distance with terrifying precision, a necessity for a predator that does not chase, but strikes with the suddenness of a closing trap. As we look closer at these massive orbs, we find something even more specialized. Embedded within the eye tissue are photophores, biological light organs that act like organic headlamps. When the squid focuses its gaze on a potential target, these organs can glow, casting a faint, eerie light directly in front of its hunting arms. It is a searchlight in the abyss, tuned to the specific blue frequencies that travel best through deep water. But the eyes serve a dual purpose. They are tuned to detect the faint, glittering trails of bioluminescence stirred up by its only true enemy, the sperm whale. A whale moving through the deep disturbs trillions of tiny plankton, creating a glowing shroud that the squid can see from over 120 meters away. This gives the colossal squid a precious few minutes to descend further or to remain perfectly still, fading into the shadows. Its very survival depends on this visual early warning system, a biological radar that scans the freezing dark for the silhouette of a leviathan. Beyond the eyes, the true horror and wonder of the colossal squid lie in its limbs. While the giant squid relies on suckers lined with small, sharp teeth, the colossal squid has evolved a much more aggressive weaponry. On the ends of its two long feeding tentacles, which can stretch out several meters, we find the clubs. These clubs are not covered in simple suckers. Instead, they are armed with 22 to 25 swiveling hooks. These are made of a material similar to a human fingernail, but they are as sharp as surgical steel. Each hook is mounted on a short, muscular stalk within a shallow depression, allowing it to rotate 360 degrees. When the tentacle strikes a fish, these hooks don't just grab, they swivel and lock into the flesh, ensuring that no matter how much the prey struggles, the grip only tightens. It is a mechanical perfection of the hunt. The hooks can turn and twist to find the softest point of entry, anchoring the squid to its meal with a grip that is almost impossible to break. If we move our examination from the long tentacles to the 8 shorter arms, the weaponry changes once again. The arms do not have the swiveling hooks of the tentacles. Instead, they are lined with stationary, 3-pointed hooks embedded in thick, muscular sheaths. These are the tools of the kill. Once the long tentacles have reeled the prey in, the 8 arms wrap around it like a cage of thorns. The 3-pointed hooks dig deep into the scales and muscle, immobilizing the animal. We see the evidence of this encounter in the forensic records of the deep sea. Patagonian toothfish, a primary food source for the squid, are frequently hauled up by commercial fishing boats with telltale scars. These are not simple bites. They are deep, rhythmic gashes and circular bruises where the squid's hooks have raked across their skin. Sometimes, a toothfish will escape, but it carries the permanent signature of the colossal squid etched into its flesh, a series of jagged lines that tell a story of a narrow escape from the hooks in the dark. This leads us to the squid's hunting strategy, which is one of patient, lethal stillness. Because the Southern Ocean is so cold, the colossal squid has a remarkably slow metabolism. It cannot afford to swim at high speeds for long periods. Instead, it is a sit-and-wait predator. It drifts in the current, its massive body nearly neutral in the water, becoming part of the darkness itself. It might wait for hours, or even days, in a state of suspended animation. Its dense, muscular mantle is designed for endurance and the occasional, explosive burst of power rather than constant travel. It is a ghost in the machine, a half-ton of muscle and ink waiting for the precise moment when a fish crosses its binocular field. Then, in a fraction of a second, the tentacles lash out, the hooks swivel into place, and the struggle begins and ends in the silence of the bathypelagic zone. This efficiency of energy is what allows it to grow to such massive proportions in a desert of ice and water. Every aspect of the colossal squid's anatomy is a response to the extreme pressures of its environment. The forward-facing eyes, the light-producing photophores, the rotating hooks, and the 3-pointed arm spikes are all evolutionary answers to the question of how to be a king in a kingdom without sun. We see a creature that has traded the frantic pace of the upper ocean for a life of calculated, heavy-duty precision. It is a predator that lives by the law of the hook. As we move deeper into the mystery of its life, we begin to realize that the colossal squid is not just a giant. It is a specialist, a finely tuned instrument of the deep that has mastered the art of the ambush. The hooks in the dark are not just for killing. They are the anchors that hold this species to existence in one of the most hostile places on Earth. We can almost see it now, hanging motionless in the cold, its great eyes wide, waiting for the next flicker of life to enter its domain. The ocean depth is not merely a place. It is a weight, a heavy, silent pressure that exists thousands of feet beneath the surface waves. Down here, in the bathypelagic zone, the light of the sun has been forgotten for millions of years. It is a world of ink and absolute chill, where the temperature hovers just above freezing. Imagine the stillness of a cathedral at midnight, but filled with the density of the sea. In this vast, pressurized vacuum, the colossal squid reigns as a ghost of the depths, a massive entity of soft tissue and sharp weaponry. Yet, even this titan is not without a shadow that haunts its existence. From the world of air and light above, a different kind of giant descends. A warm-blooded behemoth, the sperm whale, plunges into the darkness, its lungs compressed and its heart rate slowing to a rhythmic, steady thrum. This is the beginning of a silent war, a conflict that has played out in the blackness for eons, unseen by human eyes, and recorded only in the flesh of the survivors. The arrival of the whale is preceded by sound. To the colossal squid, whose senses are tuned to the slightest shift in current, the whale is a rhythmic percussion of clicks and pulses. These sounds are not just noises. They are a physical force, a sonic searchlight that the whale uses to map the void. The squid, floating like a pale, fleshy moon in the darkness, feels these vibrations against its sensitive skin. It knows the hunter is near. The whale is a creature of immense mass, a mountain of muscle and blubber that carries with it the warmth of the upper world. As it nears the 1,000-meter mark, the pressure becomes its ally, pinning the squid against the vastness of the deep. There is a terrible grace in the way the whale moves, navigating a world where there is no up or down, only the direction of the hunt. It seeks the specific density of the squid, the unique acoustic signature of its hard beak and its massive mantle. When the encounter finally begins, it is not with a roar, but with a sudden, violent displacement of water. The whale, sensing the squid's massive presence through its sophisticated sonar, accelerates. The squid, in turn, deploys its primary defense. Its arms, thick as tree trunks and lined with rotating, razor-sharp hooks, flare outward in a display of desperate defiance. These hooks are not like the simple suckers of smaller squids. They are curved talons of chitin, designed to sink deep and hold fast. As the whale's great, blunt head rushes through the dark, the squid strikes. The hooks rake across the whale's skin, leaving long, jagged furrows in the thick blubber. To an observer, this would look like a dance of titans, a swirling knot of limbs and massive bodies illuminated only by the frantic, strobe-like flashes of bioluminescence triggered by the chaos of the struggle. The water is whipped into a frenzy, cold currents, clashing as the warm-blooded predator and the cold-blooded master of the deep grapple in a lightless embrace. The evidence of these battles is etched permanently onto the bodies of the whales that return to the surface. Scientists have long observed the circular scars and the long, parallel lines that mark the heads and flanks of old bulls. These are the signatures of the colossal squid. Some of these scars are as large as dinner plates, indicating suckers of a size that hint at individuals even larger than those we have captured in our nets. Each mark tells a story of a struggle that lasted minutes, but felt like hours. The whale seeks to stun the squid with sonic blasts or simply to crush it within its massive, tooth-lined jaws, while the squid fights to find a point of leverage, its hooks seeking the sensitive areas around the whale's eyes or blowhole. It is a contest of pure endurance. The whale has only the oxygen it brought from the surface, while the squid has the advantage of its home terrain, yet it lacks the whale's relentless mammalian drive to succeed. Deep within the stomach of the whale, the final evidence of these encounters is found. When a sperm whale is examined, researchers often find thousands of hard, black, parrot-like beaks. These beaks are the only parts of the squid that the whale cannot digest. They are the trophies of 1,000 hunts, a graveyard of giants held within the hunter's belly. Some of these beaks are enormous, belonging to colossal squids that must have weighed over 1,000 pounds in life. This tells us that the battles are often won by the whale, but the scars on the outside suggest the price of the meal is always high. The whale carries the squid's mark forever, a map of the midnight zone written in scar tissue. These encounters are perhaps the most violent events on the planet, yet they happen in a silence so profound that it is almost holy, occurring far beneath the reach of any human storm or ship. As the struggle concludes, the winner remains in the depths to feed or begins a slow, triumphant ascent toward the moonlight, while the loser becomes a part of the sea's eternal cycle. The water settles once more. The silt, kicked up by the thrashing of giants, drifts back down like gray snow, coating the seafloor in a layer of ancient dust. The silence returns, heavy and absolute. The midnight zone is a place of long shadows and even longer memories, where the battle of the behemoths is just one more secret kept by the crushing weight of the miles of water above. The colossal squid retreats into the gloom, its luminous eyes searching once more for the next vibration, the next shadow, or the next titan to emerge from the black. We are left to wonder about the scale of what we cannot see, imagining the stories told in the deep, where the only witness is the cold, unyielding pressure of the abyss. The Southern Ocean is a place of absolute, bone-chilling cold. Here, the water temperatures often linger at minus 1.8 degrees Celsius, just a fraction away from freezing solid. As we descend deeper, away from the surface where icebergs groan and crack, the pressure begins to build. It is a slow, heavy weight, pushing against everything with a force that would crush a human in seconds. In this realm of the eternal deep, the light of the sun is a distant memory, a faint shimmer that vanishes long before you reach the depths where the colossal squid makes its home. This is a world of permanent midnight. The silence here is thick, broken only by the low-frequency pulses of life or the rhythmic churning of internal tides. It is in this freezing silence that the greatest predator keeps its watch. Our understanding of this creature is built upon rare encounters. For centuries, the colossal squid was a ghost, known only by the sharp, black beaks found in the bellies of sperm whales. It was in February of 2007 that the world truly saw the scale of this animal. A New Zealand fishing vessel, working the frigid waters of the Ross Sea, pulled a living specimen from the depths. It weighed nearly 500 kilograms, a staggering half a ton of muscle and ink. When it was brought to the museum in Wellington, scientists waited 14 months for it to slowly thaw. They watched as the red skin revealed its secrets. This specimen remains a singular window into a species that might number in the millions, yet remains invisible to the human eye. What makes the colossal squid truly terrifying is its weaponry. Unlike other squid, it possesses 2 rows of rotating, 3-pronged hooks at the ends of its tentacles. These hooks are made of chitin, and they can swivel 360 degrees to bury themselves deep into the flesh of a struggling prey. Imagine the texture of those hooks, sharp as steel, dragging a 6-foot-long toothfish toward a beak that can shear through bone with the ease of heavy shears. These are the tools of a master of the ambush. When sperm whales surface, they are often covered in long, circular scars and deep gashes, the physical evidence of a struggle that takes place 2,000 meters below the waves. These battles are silent, violent, and ancient. Perhaps the most haunting feature of the colossal squid is its eye. At 27 centimeters wide, it is the largest eye in the history of the animal kingdom. It is the size of a dinner plate, designed with a massive lens to capture every stray photon of light in the darkness. In the abyss, light comes from bioluminescence, the ghostly blue and green glows of jellyfish and tiny drifting organisms. The squid's eye can detect the movement of a sperm whale from hundreds of meters away by watching for the disruption of this light. Imagine that eye, staring through the dark, unblinking and vast. It is an organ of pure perception, built for a world where there is no horizon, only the infinite, velvet blackness of the water and the slow, heavy movement of the deep. The most profound part of this story is what we do not know. We do not know where they mate or where they lay their eggs, though we suspect they drift in gelatinous masses through the mid-water. Scientists estimate that a colossal squid may grow from a few millimeters long to over 10 meters in just 2 short years. This rate of growth is almost supernatural, a testament to the efficiency of their metabolism in the crushing cold. Yet, almost every adult specimen ever found has been female. The males remain a mystery, hidden perhaps even deeper or in regions where no ship has ever cast a net. We are looking at a species that dominates its ecosystem, making up nearly 77% of the biomass consumed by sperm whales. Yet we are only seeing the briefest glimpses of their secret lives. The legacy of the colossal squid is one of enduring wonder. It reminds us that our planet still holds giants that owe nothing to the world of air and light. In the deep trenches of Antarctica, the eternal deep is a sanctuary for things that are older and more alien than anything we can imagine. The colossal squid does not need to be seen to exist. It thrives in the pressure, it hunts in the dark, and it passes through its life with a dignity that we are only beginning to respect. As we pull back from the freezing waters and return to the surface, we leave the Leviathan behind. It is still there, its massive eyes watching for a flicker of light, its presence a permanent part of the ocean's soul, drifting forever in the cold. The case rests now. Let the details fade. You are safe. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and have a good night. Sleep well.